We're going to talk about the economy here for a little bit. And Bruce Torres is the Director of Communications for the American Small Business League, and the Don't Cheat Women Project supports advocacy work that aims to help women-owned small businesses in federal contracting. And we want to talk about an interesting story about business creation here in the United States of America right now. Bruce, welcome to the show. Good morning.
Great to be here. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. Bruce, tell us a little bit about your background. How long you've been doing this and what got you involved in the first place?
I've been doing this about a year and a half. For a year and a half before that, I was interviewing Lloyd Chapman on my podcast. He's the founder and president of the American Small Business League. You can learn all about us at ASBL.com.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a lone wolf exposing the fact that most small business contracts really go to big businesses. The federal government is supposed to steer 23% of its contracting budget for goods and services every year to small businesses. They say they do, they don't. The big businesses that get those contracts don't create new jobs.
It's a racket, isn't it? Isn't it a racket, Bruce, essentially, what's going on in the federal contracting?
Yeah, unfortunately, absolutely. Like so much that the federal government is doing and has been doing for decades. We need another scandal and problem like we need a hole in the head. And yet this is our mission, because if small businesses really got those contracts, Bill, they would create hundreds of thousands, maybe up to 2 million new jobs every year. Top of the job small businesses create anyway. Economic prosperity as intended by the 1953 Small Business Act. That created the Small Business Administration to do a few things, provide credit, but also steer a fair portion, now 23%, of federal contracts to small businesses. 30 more seconds. We are nothing but a small business nation. 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses. And if you favor the big businesses, the 0.1% of 36 million businesses, most of them are small businesses, Washington works for and favors the big businesses, the giant corporations we always hear about. How's the stock market doing? How's NASDAQ? Trillion-dollar investments in these trillion-dollar companies. It's a scam. It's a ruse. It's to distract us from the fact that we are nothing but a small business nation.
That's a fascinating statement there, and it kind of, you're kind of giving a little fire under my concerns when I see so many administrations, not just in the Trump administration, but they've got all the big paragons of business out there, you know, the gods, as it were, up there. Some of the biggest, largest, most politically connected people, and they're the ones directing the show, in essence. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm old enough to reflect on, you know, life and how it works. I believe that we become what we behold. So if you parade on stage corporate titans, and you're always talking about these billion, trillion-dollar companies, we identify with what we look at, and we think we are that, oh, as they succeed, I'm succeeding. And we have to slow down and realize, what are the facts? So it takes a little work to really get well informed.
Okay, that's really interesting here. Well, I would appreciate your acumen applied to an issue here, because more than 3 million Americans have filed for a new business, and there's like a small business boom going on. What are the economic situations that are generating that right now? I'm sure you must be happy about that.
Well, yeah, we looked into it a bit, and what's driving it is concern about job loss for many factors, one of which is AI. That's got a lot of folks filing the paperwork to get an EIN number if they become operational and then they actually have employees. That's what's growing, is simply the paperwork where people just apply for that tax status where, like, you'll be an employer and then you'll have employees down the road. There's been like 500,000 or 3 million this year or something like that, but only 5% are projected to ever become employer firms within a year, you know, something like 29,000. So
businesses aren't being started.
People are applying for an EIN number. That's what's happening, which is the first step.
The first step.
You know, launching a business and having employees.
Well, I wonder if part of this is people that are getting even zeroed out in their own corporation. Then they say, hey, I have I have skills. Maybe I should just do this on my own. Okay, Intel fires me, so I'm going to go and, hang up my own shingle. I wonder if some of that's what's going on.
Well, absolutely. And that's part of just human nature, which we must celebrate, which is to explore and be creative, et cetera, et cetera. We are handicapped in America by the public school experience that rewards obedience and subservience. So to become an entrepreneur is scary. To start your own business is scary. To think for yourself, to make your own decisions. We're not trained in doing that until we get out of school, and that's why so many are melting down at 18 and 21 years old and need crying rooms and blankets and puppies to hold, because we're not allowed to make decisions and develop the confidence in our own judgment throughout our formative years.
That is a fabulous statement, Bruce. Bruce, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I also think that part of it has been this desire to, and I don't know if this was driven by labor unions or not, but the drive to make it next to impossible or very difficult for a young person to go to work and at least learn work ethic and, showing up on time and how to deal with it, how to deal with getting yelled at, by the boss, which would happen occasionally, that sort of thing, and actually to learn. How much of that is due to be? It's a very different work climate, I think, for young workers today than it was when I was growing up.
Yes, and it's the result of multiple generations being destroyed by the public school experience, which is meant, like boot camp, to destroy you as an individual and turn you into something. Boot camp in the military destroys you as an individual human being to make you a thing, a soldier, a function that will take orders and kill and do things that a well-functioning, healthy human being would never do. School does the same thing. It's meant to destroy, enfeeble, terrify the vast majority and sort and raise up the few who can be psychopaths in hierarchies. They get groomed for political position and corporate positions and to be the chairman of CEOs that are murderous and evil and exploitive, and it's a big problem. I want to take, if I could, well, let me let you reply to that because that was huge.
Well, actually, that is a big one. I know that that's probably not a very popular statement there because, remember, we're told in the United States of America, the land of the free, that these people, these psychopaths, are the people who we should be emulating and respecting the most.
Yes, because our culture, through officialdom, politics, media, celebrities, and advertising, are psychological operations to make us dysfunctional along these lines, cripple us, and then reward and distract us and give us a bunch of drugs for our anxiety because we're not functioning at a healthy, sane level. And there are a lot of independent voices and podcasters, et cetera, and authors who are raising the alarm about, hey, what is sanity? What is happiness? What is health as a human being? What's health as a human being integrated in a functioning community on a healthy, planet? Huge conversations. I want to take 30 seconds, Bill, if I could, to brag about ASBL.com and then also our Don't Cheat Women project. Okay. People need to go to not only ASBL.com, but if people would go to ASBL.substack. There's a couple bills in Congress that are proposed that would really, really hurt, especially women-owned small businesses. And if people go to ASBL.substack.com, the article pinned at the top, dated May 21st, tells everybody all about it and also how to find your representative and your 2 senators and say, hey, don't let this happen, please. It all comes down to identity. Who are you? Well, we're a small business nation. Okay. And who are you as an individual? Well, I'm an expression of, infinite creative stuff. Call it God, call it consciousness. And that's where the love and the fun and the creativity happens when we overcome fear and just, imagine loving each other as fellow human beings.
Bruce, I love the way you think. You kind of remind me that the entrepreneur is struggling in our society right now because our society has corroded or I guess some would say progressed to the point where everything that is not permitted is required. Everything that we work with, whether it's building a house, getting a job, getting a government ID, going to school, if I want to build a house, everything's got to be permitted at every level from some functionary, from some psychopathic functionary within the system, the psychopaths that you end up talking about. And then whatever is not a part of the permitting process is something which is just required. Go to school, pay your taxes, all the rest of it. Don't complain. And whatever you do, vote for the Democrat or Republican of your choice, all right? And that's democracy.
And it reminds me of one of the great things Thomas Jefferson described was, if we go into debt, if we let our leaders, quote unquote, put us into debt, we will soon be taxed on every little thing like they are in Europe and have no free time to reflect, let alone judge and evaluate, let alone influence what our representatives are doing. We just had this big 4th of July, and the founding ideals are so worthy of study because they explained all this, how every government gets co-opted by the rich and the awful. And, 50 years after the founding, Jefferson and Adams were writing to each other, kind of scratching their head and saying, can you believe it lasted 50 years?
Yeah, what happened?
Republics don't last.
Yeah.
Because it's human nature.
And they thought and that it didn't last then, right? 50 years, they were thinking. Of course, we would think back at that time as idyllic by comparison, I think. Now, let me ask, I wanted to tie, since you are American Small Business League, and the Don't Cheat Women Project, okay? And we'll get all your information up for sure. I wanted to get your take here. That nationwide, we're getting everybody opening businesses. And here in the state of Oregon, business closures are outnumbering the openings, and that gap is growing. This was a big article in the Oregonian, and this is coming from federal and state deals like, as an example, first 9 months of 2025, 6,000 more businesses closed than opened in the state of Oregon. That was just a year ago, at this time here. And I don't know if you're familiar with the way Oregon runs. Is it only because we're just a left-wing controlled state for the most part, with a little bit of spots of a little red here and there, or is there something deeper?
I've got a good friend in Oregon named Chris Milligan, and he runs a small publishing company. I'm going to ask him about that because I agree with your assessment of the quality of the government out there. I don't have any other insight. I can only tell you 4 years ago, I spent 3 weeks with Chris in Oregon, first time out there. I really liked it. I really, really did. It was rural. But like you were telling the caller or the person just before I came on, you're very informed to know of the squeeze to drive us out of the rural areas and corral us into their controlled cities. So maybe you're at the vanguard. Maybe your state is unlucky enough to have more of it already inflicted on you that would come to other states that are more urban. I don't know.
Huh. Interesting. I appreciate you coming on. I like the way you think, Bruce. I'm going to have you back. I especially like the way you use the term psychopaths and sociopaths. I really do. Okay.
I'm not the first. I'd love to be back. Great talking to you. Thank you.
Bruce Torres, the Don't Cheat Women Project, supports advocacy work that aims to elevate women-owned and small businesses in federal contracting. Once again, it is the ASBL.com. Is that how you get to your main website there, Bruce?
Yes, my friend. Yes.
Thank you very much. Good talk.